we are only successful as a company if we deliver all these values in the form of rewards to you in an aggregated format that you can use in the best way possible. Reward program Max Miles is best in class.
What if missing a flight could change your entire life? Thanks for joining us on The First, a platform dedicated to elevating the startup ecosystem. I'm your host, Alex Rankin. Today's guest, Joe, turned a travel mishap into a mission, building HeyMax, a company that's simplifying personal finance the way Duolingo simplified language learning. From a modest upbringing in Shanghai to scaling products at Expedia and Meta, Joe's journey is anything but typical. He shares how a black swan moment at Meta led him to assemble a dream team of engineers, how speed of execution, not just ideas, won over early investors, and why rewards optimization could be the next frontier in fintech. This episode offers lessons to early-stage founders on startup execution, team building, and turning personal obsession into business innovation. Let's dive into the first conversation with Joe of HeyMax.
Joe, welcome to the first podcast.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you.
So I think as a start for people living under a rock in Singapore or outside of Singapore, what is HeyMax? Can you detail that?
HeyMax is like the Duolingo for your personal finance. Everyone knows personal finance wellness is really hard. It's very hard to figure out the best personal finance product to use. It's very hard to know exactly what to do when. It's very laborious work. So what HeyMax mission to do is to make it easy so that first of all, right now from a credit card payment rewards, the rewards you're getting from day-to-day shopping everywhere online and increasingly more offline, you're able to earn a consolidated rewards so that we make it easy, make it fun, make it engaging, and make the results very measurable so that you will, as a consumer, you will get a free vacation, at least one every year by using HeyMax. Then you don't need to worry about which credit card to use where. You don't need to worry about how to get the most out of your day-to-day spend. We consolidate, aggregate, give you the most accurate and most high rewards options available for you to complete your purchase.
Awesome, mate. And when I was doing the background research on you, there's quite a lot of pieces to unpack as a part of your journey. So everything from multiple cracks at founding companies, obviously a long time at Meta, schooling in the US, now back in Singapore. But maybe let's start from the start. Let's talk about, origination, background. Where did the journey begin?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Born and raised in Shanghai. One of the typical attributes of people born in or grew up in Shanghai is like family don't really travel much. Like I think when I was growing up, I was born in 1990. Starting in 1990, maybe all the way to 2020, it's a period of time in China where they have seen no downturn. Born and raised in China in a very moderate, very normal family. Both parents are like working. I think my mom's an accountant. My dad works in a government job here and there. Not really in the government kind of government, but like some investment management. But like when I say investment management, it's like managing a cafe, kind of like investment management. It's not like like big infrastructure project. No, not like that. It's very normal. Very, very to your point that I think my first plane travel anywhere outside of Shanghai was when I'm 16-year-old. Right? My first computer, I only got it like begging them. I only get to touch my own first personal computer when I'm 14 years old. It's like 2004, right? It's quite normal in my age and my generation grew up in China. But I think from a different perspective, it could seem like, oh wow, it's actually like quite different, right, compared to say people living in Singapore. I went to US when I'm 2010. I went from Shanghai Jiaotong University on year 3. Serendipitously, I joined this program of University of Michigan that allowed me to transfer to University of Michigan at year 3. After graduation, 2013, it was like living in Seattle, looking for houses. It was like, why is the house so cheap? Like I grew up in Shanghai. It was like houses like extremely expensive at that time. I was like, why is it so cheap? I was like, then I suddenly realized, oh wow, the whole world went through a recession in 2008. I had no idea. Absolutely zero idea that happened. Like, that's how oblivious I was living, like, grow up in Shanghai. Like, there's just no downturn. Right? I think it's a very lucky, a very lucky upward trend. Right? It's like very smooth, very smooth.
Did you have aspirations back then to, have schooling or your career starting in the US?
Oh,
Or?
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like now I feel comfortable saying that I'm a pretty serendipitous person and not a big planner.
Right.
In China, like, there's very heavy emphasis put on education. I think PhD is the best, right? If you can put more years in school, that's much better than doing anything else. Right? There's actually not a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship at all. Weirdly, my dad tried a few things on entrepreneurship when he was younger, but generally it all failed, and it's all very small scale, and we didn't pan out that well. So there's not a lot of like excitement about entrepreneurship. Went to US also out of serendipity. I went to this school in Shanghai. Actually, I was supposed to go to another school, so that prepared me to go study like maybe car manufacturing engineering in Germany.
Right.
And it ended up like, I think in China there's this Gaokao system, which you take an exam to go to university. I was supposed to go to this like slightly less good university. I mean, it's a bit not necessarily kosher to say that you're not supposed to really rank the university, but like in China there's a strict points ranking system. Right? So like, I actually scored a bit higher than I expected, and I actually jumped me to a different university. I was like, oh, okay, now what I do? I went to a university. It was a good engineering, I think the best engineering college in Shanghai, and will study computer. I wanted, I think when I'm 14, right, I said I got my first computer. I actually had to, initially it was like pretending I'm not into game. I'm like into computer hardware. I ain't really into, I actually assembled my first computer by buying bits without even have that computer. I already studied the magazine so well that I can know exactly which part I want to get. Right? It's a bit of like AMD underdog era where I think ATI was still a thing before being bought by AMD. So it was quite that got my interest in computer at the time. So I thought, okay, cool, I'll study computer then. 10 days, or less than 10 days, I think, into my university in Shanghai. Right? It's in the summer, it's really hot. September, went to a university and realized, wow, the dorm don't have AC. And it was like 35 degrees summer nights. I can't survive this. And then serendipitously, there's this, they're doing this joint institute with University of Michigan, where in the early days, it's very hard for this school to find its legitimacy within the Chinese population, because usually when you're doing something with foreign university, it's some kind of like, it sounds scammy at first, but this is actually a one of the last truly state level collaboration between two universities before Chinese and U.S. relationship got a bit sour. This university is like, hey, you can it's within Shanghai Jiao Tong University. It's like a different school within a university. Right. So I went there, took their offer to say like you can transfer. So the benefits that because their school has the entire U.S. summer, they ship Michigan professors to Shanghai Jiao Tong University to teach there. So during the summer, you have to. It's a proper semester. So your dorm has AC.
So that was the decision making. Right. A lot of thought.
Yeah. That was the amount of thought I put into like, okay, study in US. I did not know much about University of Michigan. I did have some aspiration to go to the best university, but I don't think I'm at the level that you can get full-on scholarship. I will say that it's never crossed my mind that our family can afford a 4-year education in US. So this is a pretty good deal all in all, because you pay for the year 3 and year 4 of US tuition, and you get a proper University of Michigan.
And you get AC as well.
Yeah, that's important. AC while in China, yes.
Touching on growing up in China in that period, like, was it that there was a lot of exposure to what was happening in the Western world in terms of technology and everything that was kind of going on? Or was it that your exposure to entrepreneurship was really limited to what you saw in mainland China?
I remember there are a few copycats of the US products, like the same version of Facebook in China. There's At the time, we can still access Facebook and Google, YouTube. I remember we all had our account when 2008. There's just the Chinese internet company just started, but I don't think there was a huge emphasis on it when I was growing up.
Right. Okay.
So post University of Michigan, then, like, we know what happens now, but you obviously landed at Expedia Group. Was there any pull to kind of come back to any of those kind of Chinese juggernauts at the time, like your Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, etc.? Because by that time, surely they were kind of gaining prominence.
Very practically, U.S. companies still pays a lot more,
Yeah.
and then you get a much higher. I mean, all of us went to U.S. just for 2 years. Going back, it feels a bit quick, right? So most people wanted to have a few years of kind of training, like immersion in Silicon Valley style companies. I think at the time when I was there, there's a huge pool of software from people studying anything remotely linked to software engineering to become a software engineer. Right? I still study not necessarily like VLSI designs, but at least like computer architecture. Like that's still something I'm particularly interested in. I study a lot on compilers. But then when you look at the job market, you realize like, yeah, there's nothing going on in the compilers world at that time. But all the software companies the internet consumers companies are hiring like crazy, right? And they can throw double the amount that they can offer the other type of more hardware leaning companies can offer. So it was the cool thing or the very, very hard thing to reject. So I know a lot of electrical engineer all takes a software engineering job, data science or information graduates took software engineering jobs, whoever can pass. Like at the time, it was like Amazon's hiring anyone who can pass their interview. It wasn't a terribly hard interview. I think I was actually at the time juggling between mostly like the Amazon and Expedia offers. Both are in Seattle. That's what got me there. I think this is one of my worst financial decision, but it kind of tell you who I am, right? I care. So I ended up joining Expedia. They don't offer any stock options. I think Amazon, I imagine like I got a pretty healthy stock offer in 2012. And I turned that down to join Expedia, mostly because I think at the time my manager is really caring. He took me around in Bellevue, Seattle, showed me around, really showed care. I was like, okay, fine. Like I want travel. I like travel. Like intrinsically, I do want to travel. And in the turn of events, I cannot predict. In Expedia for 2 years, the only place I traveled for work was like a train ride to Portland from Seattle. There's no zero.
The dream.
Yeah, it was like the zero business travel, no fun stuff at all. So that was a bit of a letdown. But like I think I did the right thing. The manager I chose, he's one of our angel investor today. That's kind of the relationship you get to build. I think you pick the right people over money.
Yeah. So you spent 2 years there, and I was actually going through this timeline of events, and I think you had your first crack at founding a company post Expedia, but then when I looked at the timelines, I think you were actually at Facebook.
Yeah.
So were you, I guess you can say it now because you've left Meta, but were you starting to found companies while you're at Meta? And I definitely want to talk about Meta, but I definitely want to talk about your first cracks as well at starting companies in the US.
Again, very serendipitous a chain of events that happened that led me there. I don't think I'm a naturally, I knew I'm going to found a company, but when the opportunity presents, I'm not gonna say no to trying out new experiences. So at the time, I think I was looking for a roommate. We can talk about it when we talk about HeyMax, but I always in the market to find a good deal. Right? At the time, I want to upgrade my living. Like I mean, earning software engineering salary US, but I'm still. I think my first roommate that I had it was like a really old lady in like Bellevue in a Bellevue downtown old like 1970 house. I was living like roommate subleasing it from like an old lady from Bellevue.
Not the bachelor's dream, really. No.
Yeah, no. It was kind of hilarious. So I was like upgrade my living, but I don't want to pay for my own place because it's a lot more expensive. So I want to look for it's a very clear set of rules. I'll look for a luxury apartment, but I want to sublease from someone, one room, ideally with a bathroom attached. And I found just like only one listing. It was a Craigslist, right? So I went to this Craigslist listing. Craigslist, for those of you know, it's like Carousel in Singapore for second use. It's an open board for you can post anything.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to pay anything. So most of the underground activities all happen there, including renting and buying secondhand stuff. So went there, subleasing from this guy. This is like at the time the most luxurious condo building in Seattle. So it's very counterintuitive. Why would anyone sublease a apartment there? So I find like this guy who's my perfect mate. So this guy, when I emailing him, he emailed back, I realized, this guy, James Liu, he's like a engineering manager at Amazon. I was like, wow, we're in the same industry. And I checked like, we share the same last name. I was like, what's going on? And then I checked even further. Oh wait, he went to Michigan. And we just met in person and realized, well, he's from Shanghai too. He's like a long lost older brother, almost thought. I found on Craigslist, but I think we connected because both are cheap. Right? He was like, I think his wife at the time moved to New York to do some extra schooling. So he was like, we're in this 2-bedroom. Like I'm cheap. I'm gonna sublease it out.
Nice.
So we met each other, and he was starting some company on the side. That was Tito, our first startup experience. He was doing it on the side, trying to start it up. He just asked me as a roommate, he's like, hey, do you want to contribute to it? I remember I didn't care anything about compensation, ownership, or anything. It was just, wow, that sounds like a fun project. Let me jump in. I don't think I cared that much about what it was working on. At least as long as I can understand it, I'm happy to start building it. So that was my first venture into entrepreneurship through a Craigslist listing.
And you got this to like a fairly, it was like $1 million in revenue. Is that right?
Yeah. James, my the co-founder, he used to be at Chag, the book rental company.
Yeah.
That is like early first product manager of some sort that then went public. So he's very quick on execution and go to market. So we have a very lean, or mostly part-time team, but that I think early on really grown into me. Is I gotta ship very fast, gotta try to put it in customer's hand, and so we did that within a few months of time working on it part-time. And the time is like you just have an Amazon API that allow you to display everything from Amazon. So ended up building a product initially that you rent books. It was like it was like rental initially. It was just like, let's rent textbooks. So he knows textbook business. So it was like, okay, fine, let's try that. And then increasingly we see that I think he did have a vision of renting anything from Amazon. That was the initial vision. It also taught me a lesson that initial vision is like doesn't really matter. Like it will morph into something a lot more interesting as you really get into it. So then, when we're renting anything, initially it was a whitelist of Amazon category, right? Amazon has a few category. Initially it was just books, and then slowly we start whitelisting more categories, like gaming, for example, gaming controllers. These things are a lot more popular, and then people are starting to ask. By the way, this is before buy now pay later was even a thing, right? That the term hasn't been coined yet. And people are asking to basically rent to own. That was the term. Like rent to own at the time in US was mostly referred to brick and mortar store in a strip mall where you can rent to own, pay installment for mattresses, large appliances.
You pay like 5 times the price.
Yeah. But it was the only term that people understand.
Yeah.
So like people proactively asking for rent to own. I think we're looking at their income, using open banking to connect to their bank account, to look at to verify their monthly or biweekly income, and then making credit assessment at the time. And then it worked out really well. Realized people really get this idea of paying installment, but also I think US, a lot of these customers that we serve, they are fine with paying a monthly fee or biweekly on their paycheck have a fee, but they don't really calculate overall how much interest that they're paying as much. So it took off really quickly, all the way to a point that instead of whitelisting, we start blacklisting the Amazon category. Basically, say all the Amazon you can rent to own anything, right? People starting renting, some people want to rent to own diapers. It was like, not necessarily a great idea, but we see this idea of rent to own really growing on people. I think this would have probably gone to become one of the first buy now pay later company in US. But this comes a key learning. Like the co-founder James says, he got a job offer he cannot refuse. Right, moved back to take on a really really high level role at Baidu. So he had the aspiration to become a VC in a startup ecosystem in China. I think at the time, it was still a really cool thing to do.
VC's not cool anymore. So.
No, that doesn't exist in China anymore. He's gone. So I think that's one of my biggest lesson takeaway is co-founder is the number one thing to get right in a startup, right? Much more than the idea, the product at the time was still gaining tractions. At the time, getting customers not as expensive as now. So it was growing really well. The default rate is very low, right? Very manageable. So we thought this could go somewhere, but then lost momentum after one key co-founder departure. Basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you're at Meta at this time though.
Yeah.
So you've already made that move and you were there for 8 years, right? Yeah. Which is pretty impressive tenure across both the US and obviously Singapore. I mean, talk us through that experience. I mean, what was that like? What was the size and scale of the business when you joined, the teams you were working in? How did you see that business evolve over time?
Yeah, right. I think I interviewed first at 2012. I think I messed up one of the interview, didn't get in, and interview again 2013 or 14 or so, and then Meta was my second job, and I was been there for 8 years. So in Seattle, Silicon Valley, across 5 years, then moved to Singapore to helping start the engineering office. So came in as one of the member of the lending team, early first engineering managers in Singapore to start the tech ecosystem in here. Quite funny. I think when I joined, it was Meta was almost 10 years old. I believe it was still prior to having 1 billion users, so it still called itself a startup. Right? That's how ridiculous it was. I think that early on, the culture education imprinting was very strong. It definitely diluted over time for sure, but I'm sure that people who joined way before me, they will say at the time it's already not much of a startup. It's a lower few thousand people, but in Seattle office where I joined, it was still 100 or so people. Everybody's by name, right? Everyone's there's still a lot of really early guys. So the culture is very much well maintained.
Right.
It will be very bold. You will meet some of the smartest people. I will say some of the smart people I've met in my life is definitely from the early days at Meta, right? Super high talent density. Also the opportunities everywhere, right? Anything you do could have millions of dollars impact easily. So it was a very very great time that I spent over there learning from the best practices and actually fairly tuned in to the culture. And then in my experience, I find that the idea is pretty pure, but it's very easily get pivoted or getting painted into a different picture, right? I always need to balance this idea between advertiser interest, the political interest and user interest. It's getting very tiring. I remember in the time it was hey, we want to give everybody a voice, but we like free speech. We don't want to be the judge of what people can say or cannot say. But over time, especially after I think 2016 election, it becomes okay, I guess we gotta do something.
Right.
We gotta do something about things, and it's not always gonna be that way. And over time become much fatter, move a lot slower, a lot more careful. One of the key turning point was also during the pandemic that there's a huge amount of over hiring that happened, right? I remember when I joined, it was like opportunities everywhere, smart people everywhere. When I think in my last year at Meta, it was like people spend a year figuring out who's doing what, right? And it's not actually doing things. So that was like a huge change. The company probably 10x, more than 10x the size over time for sure.
Right.
I think the lived experience of living in a company is quite different.
I want to talk about your transition out of Meta because I think it is obviously a catalyst story for HeyMax. But one question for you, just given you were there for 8 years, do you think that being a seasoned operator means you are a good founder?
No, not at all. I think the learning is just so different. And I will say my reflection is probably spent too many years there, but it's pretty hard to argue the ROIs when they pay like insane amount of over market rate pay to keep you there for not doing a lot of things, right? I think I'm not as mission driven to say like, oh, I'm gonna do something to like break this ROI. Because I don't think I'm that brave. But I think I probably should have, like, given that I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone, for sure. But I had the confidence, and tell you the story how we decided to start a company is quite interesting. But I had the confidence because the Tito and the 2 startup experience I had while at Meta, for which I'm eternally grateful of being able to do. So I know that I'm pretty well suited. I will enjoy the journey, at least. I will enjoy the journey by a lot. I will enjoy talk to customer every day, see how fast we can move. That give me a lot of energy. So I know that. But I think for a lot of people, it's pretty hard to have that lived experience, have that confidence before they quit their corporate job to start a company.
Before we get into founding story and I guess the inception of HeyMax, when was it that you really inflected in terms of becoming the points junkie and sort of saving obsessive individual that I think is required to go build what you're building now? Like, when did that start to take hold in the journey?
Quite interesting, right? A lot of people, especially if you grow up fairly without a lot of encountering a lot of problem, like living a comfortable life, finding an important or interesting problem to solve is actually pretty hard, right? That was
for sure.
It is a problem that a lot of people of Singapore, for example, have, because the life is just generally fairly good. Right? You don't have that. For me, it was a guilty pleasure I think I had during my school years at Michigan. I think I was a bit of a deals junkie when I was at school. I think it was, that's one learning I had. Only I think a few months ago I started to realize, okay, I am an expert here. Like, I actually have always been under this imposter syndrome that I don't think like that's a guilty pleasure, right? It's something of your almost like your dirty little secret you want to keep away from people. Because I always feel very guilty thinking about how many hours I put in to find the best deal on buying some random stuff, right? My wife will laugh at me for doing this and like question my ROI on time spent. But I'm always in the sense of like, I'm an engineer. I want to try to learn, right? How can I automate this? First, I need a desire. I always have the desire to find a really good deal and optimize the system. But you cannot know what to optimize until you've wasted enough time on it. Almost.
We're kindred spirits in this regard. I mean, maybe just for a moment, like put some numbers around it. Like, how many credit cards have you had and churned through? How many points have you earned and burned? How many Walmarts have you visited?
This is a safe space.
Yeah.
I have a spreadsheet in my phone. I think I still have about 50 credit card open. I think my lifetime probably over 100 cards.
It's amazing.
Churned through a lot of cards when I was in US, but I also have a lot of in the US there's a lot more options. I live across multiple states, across different kind of from being a student to earning a pretty good salary in Meta. Have a fairly wide span of cards that I visited and decided not to keep and tried something new. And I moved to Singapore, another hugely popular credit card market.
Yep.
Points burn, oh my God, that's millions. But how I got into the points game, I have a very specific story. I remember I was trying to save some money. At the time, there was a lot of startup in US that help you rent your car while you're on vacation. Terrible idea. But I'm always I'm always those first people to try it out, right? So I tried it out. It was quite slow taking me. The shuttle was really slow taking me to airport. But I also like I think an hour away from boarding. So it's like, oh yeah, fine. I'll stand in line of United Airlines trying to check in luggage. I think it was my wife's first trip back. My now wife, then girlfriend, first trip back to China. So we stand in line for 30 minutes. And once we get into the line to say check in luggage, they tell you like, well, our luggage closed like 45 minutes before boarding. I was like, but you asked me to stand in line. Like, what am I supposed to do, right? And I was feeling so angry and ashamed, and like why? How can this be better, right? And I saw the empty line next to me. It was like, oh, some sort of like premier stuff. Then I started looking into it. I remember like that's so shameful. Like imagine in your home airport, then you find like, well, I already packed everything. I'm not gonna go back because it's I'm gonna spend another $100 going back, Uber back and here. So I ended up like spending $60 at the motel next to a airport overnight.
Because you'd missed check-in basically.
I cannot check in the baggage. That's it. It was so sad of a day that like gave me like that confidence to say.
I'm sure your wife is thrilled with it all as well.
Yeah, I had the shame. Like I remember I still have this picture of like the worst Domino pizza we had. It was just like so much shame put into it. It was like, that was the only flight I've ever missed in my life out of so. Like,
but that was the moment.
That was the moment. It was like, wow, we gotta play this game. I gotta win this game. I cannot be played by them like this anymore.
Does the pizza photo sit at your desk today? Like, that would be awesome.
I've tried to optimize a way into like United's like top tier programs. I think called 1K or something. I realized it's not that great. It enabled me to think about how can I play this game really well so that I can reap the benefits out of it, right? That was the initial nudge for me to start looking into it. But as I'm looking into it, I realized, well, actually lots of people want it. Lots of people want to do well on personal finance rewards, their status, but it's just so cumbersome, so much information, right? And then there's got to be a better way to do it. But
because it sort of feels like there's a spectrum, but really everyone's clustered at one end, i.e. you're happy to spend probably literally hundreds of hours on this one problem statement, or the idea of spending 10 minutes on it is already too much. And so that's a really interesting way to sort of see segmentation, I think, of consumer behavior. There's not a lot of in between, right? It's obsession or not.
Yeah, right. And me and my wife is like exactly that. Like I will give her so much crap for like spending $50 checking a bag of like spending, I think it was like extra 2 kilos on the luggage. I was like, you could have put it into your backpack and go on. It's just like, I'm like, just don't want to bother. So it was like a good extreme of contrast, but good tension.
So let's circle around the inception of HeyMax. So you're obviously not alone. How did this all come about with your co-founders? How did you convince them to join you on the journey? There's a story behind that of you all working together. So just maybe dig a bit deeper on that.
Sure, yeah. 4 of us were at the same team at Meta Singapore. I was sort of general manager of the team in Singapore, and then these are the top tech talents, right? The software engineers, data engineer on the team, and we had a luxury of working together. So some of them from Meta in the US, some are recruited locally. So pretty good variety of different backgrounds of within our founding team, although 4 of us are all engineers. We're kind of lucky that we are the first, because Singapore office is still quite not well built out at the time that the whole tech recession start to hit. So end of 2022, we're the first wave of global Meta layoff that I call ourselves kind of the beneficiary of it, because we didn't have to deal with any of the emotions that within the company, the mooring, the uncertainty that happened in the company. And because I think all of us had reasonably good tenure at Facebook, so the package or whatever it's not that bad. I thought like, great, I'm gonna take I remember it's like a movie-like story, right? Imagine, you have the ND filter on your camera. It was a nice break I was taking in Kobe, Japan, like in the morning, 7 a.m., strolling with my 2-year-old daughter at the time in a park, and starting to see my phone. My friends ping me, "Are you okay?" And I realized, what do you mean? Like, am I all ex-Facebook friends? And they're like, "Oh, are you okay?" I was like, "What's going on?" And I searched the news and I realized I think we had the idea that I think this will happen. This doesn't make sense within the company anymore. So see the layoff news, I thought like, okay, great. Like actually pretty quickly, like, initially it was a bit of a, an anger or however, whatever emotion you go through when these kind of like things happen. But it was very quick, like within a few hours. I think it was just at night I was driving slightly angry in the Kobe mountain roads. Like for anyone who's interested in driving, that's great mountain roads, especially.
And you're driving aggressively around.
I'm not gonna say that. Yeah, it was a nice Mazda I had, but it was a quickly faded. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm never taken a break after working for 10 years. So like, oh, I'm gonna take a long break. And I think I distinctly remember there was a moment. By the way, that was like a month-long Japan trip. So at Facebook, one thing that was pretty good is every 5 years you get a sabbatical of some sort for a month. It was like my first time taking a sabbatical. 10 days in, got laid off. And that was the
longest sabbatical.
Yeah, it was like, dude, but luckily I planned for it, so I'm not gonna call it quit just because this kind of external thing happened. So I planned this 1 month thing. I want to bond with my daughter a bit more. And during the trip, I had to spend some time making sure my team at the time was all feeling like somewhat supported, although I'm far away.
Yep.
Right. And they like, because for some of them, it's much more significant of a setback than others. I realized one thing. I wanted to take a long break, but I realized one thing was that, dude, like this is such an interesting black swan event that from my past experience, it's like finding the co-founders is the hardest. But like, some of these people are like people I will tap on first and beg them to like come out, go found a company with me if in a different situation where I started a company in a different setup, and they will be like, oh no, how am I gonna quit my $500,000 a year kind of job, right? It's very hard to convince them. Now the job market is shit. They're looking for a job. And then a lot of them are not going to really start a company if they've never experienced and know that before. It's a very huge jump from going from corporate to start a company. I figured that I think this is like the time. I had to do it. I had to like let go of my desire to take a 6-month break or doing something, fun to say, well, that's probably the most interesting thing I can do now. And what it is like, I'm just tell people that I'm starting this company, like not saying like, hey, should we start a company, right? I'm just saying, because I realize the value I can add is I know I will enjoy starting a company from scratch. I know that a lot of people needed a bit of just a nudge, right? Push in the back to say like, okay, something already started, you either get on the train or not.
Yeah.
Turned out that'll work. I just set up a meeting. I think it was initially at my house, or a regular weekly meeting with a few people. I open invite to a few teammates I used to hang out with. It's just like, hey, let's start on this. Try to figure out like what we can do. I'm gonna start this anyway. So if anyone's interested, I mean, of course, I have a few like that set on a few targets right in mind, but ended up getting more people interested than initially I imagined. And these are like the top people, right? This is I think our company's culture. I don't think we are that set on like we have to do X, Y, Z, but we're like very interested to do the best we can to explore boundaries and explore and take no assumptions, but explore like really deeply on the boundaries, how far we can push on the missions. Like in this case, a lot of the mission is like, can we challenge ourselves, like really truly develop our real talents and our own finding the ceiling of ourselves, right? Which I truly think that's why I a bit regret I maybe spent a bit too many years in Facebook, because I think the learning speed, the amount of things I learned, the amount of real very, very tight bond that I built, 1.5 year of building a startup, far exceeded the 8 years I spent at Meta.
I've heard you say before that one of the hardest things of starting the company was having 4 technical co-founders, which if I spoke to other founders I know, they would jump at the opportunity to have some of the teammates that you have. you want to maybe expand on that? Like, what are actually some of the challenges regarding starting HeyMax, especially when you've got this exceptional group of technical people around you?
The hardest is a bit of an exaggeration. I think beyond, for us, the hard part initially was that we don't really have a lot of business experience and also the symptom of not having enough problems in our life to say like, oh, this is like, I don't know, we will, in Southeast Asia, of course, for people who worked here for a while, maybe they have more empathies for different business, for example, in Indonesia and around Southeast Asia, right? Some like highly aspirational and high growth market. We look into it and we will say, we're not that great at pretending to know what we don't know. So for us, initially trying to figure out what to do and align, like for having too many people in the room making a decision becomes a bit more challenging. Well, the good thing is that we spent over a year, I think almost 2 years working as a team together. So we have the trust developed within each other. So at least we don't need to worry about any private interest or any kind of incentive of misalignment. So we're more pure on discussing the value and the essence of the idea, the execution, rather than like questioning everyone's motivation. So that was, first of all, having over 1 year working together is quite good. The other thing is, I think it's a unique feature. I'm not sure how replicable it is for other founders. We're not really like, we're friends, but not friends that you will hang out all the time. We're very happy with just seeing each other at work and feel comfortable working with each other, and then go out about to our own different social lives and stuff. Like we're not really like super close as a pack and we want to hang out, like play fun stuff all the time. Not really. But then we grow very comfortable doing that, and that's very sustainable, right? And you don't need to deal with like the different kind of interest divergence or whatnot. So that's unique about us. So when we were trying to make a decision, HeyMax wasn't the only, or the idea about personal finance. We're actually debating on the two main diverging streams. One is about parenting and one is about personal finance. I'm only half joking to say the reason why we landed on personal finance was because two of the co-founders that joined don't have kids. And they couldn't emphasize with the problem as much. So we're like, okay, fine. I think initially the thinking is pretty naive and pure. Just exactly as what we were talking about in the beginning, right? So personal finance is really hard. Why is it that hard? Why is that if I don't make any decision, take no actions, my result as a person will suck compared to people that spend a lot of time optimizing it? But for them, is the ROI really good? Like there gotta be some better outcome that with technology, we're a bunch of technologists. I think what's good about us is that we can imagine what the potential solution will roughly feel like, and very quickly be able to estimate how much work it is to get there. So we seen I think intuitively seen an opportunity here to say, well, at the time, like AI was very popular, ChatGPT just got the popular receptions. We thought like, okay, there's something there, right? There's something that we can change that trade-off, time and effort, time and result trade-off.
I think what was interesting when we first met each other was, you talk a lot about serendipity, and you talk about, we didn't have this like fixed mission that we had to go in and solve this one problem. But I think the observation that Alex and I had early on was that you guys came across as very disciplined. Like the way that you engaged with this obsession of customer early on, there was groups set up virtually. There was, I remember pizza nights. There was this idea of like, we want to try and extract all of this information. And if I think about other engineering teams that are pure technical that we've seen, there's often this tendency to go into a room and come out 6 months later with this really, what they perceive to be interesting product. They try and sell it and no one really comes, right? Which was really the opposite of what we saw when we kind of met you guys. And so I think one of the questions I always wanted to ask is like, who had that tendency? Who drove that? Because it wasn't typical of what we would have seen of, say, an all technical team.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. But it's not. It's a very complex. Deserve a very complex answer. I don't think it's one thing, right? It's our combined unique experiences of Facebook culture of our entire team. I think one thing about Facebook culture is good is that try to ship every day, right? There's a continuous development, continuous deployment happening I think when we left, it's like every hour or so, there's some deployment happening. You don't even know when your code's going to ship, right? You just ship it and it'll be out at some point, right? Very quickly, like within hours or some so, right? Initially it was like bi-weekly shipping when I joined Facebook. So it was always that quick release mindset and very rough, very data-driven mindset that was pre-built. I think our company culture, it cannot escape. So it's either all in on the best part of Facebook or do the opposite of what Facebook does. So I can give you the all in on Facebook culture is like to ship fast and test it out, right? Really run tests, use data to make good judgment, right? You use insights to create hunch of what to build as a hypothesis, but really emphasize on okay, we got to test it out. Like if it cannot be tested out in 2 weeks, if you're saying like we got to work on this for a few months and launch it, and all of us will be very skeptical. It's just that natural tendency that because of the culture that we're in, it will be very hard to convince other people to like sit around and work on something for 4 months and then launch it, hope for the best and learn from it. We will almost always gonna reject these kind of ideas and morph that into something that how do we test it in 2 weeks, 1 week, right? I think also some level of insecurity is we always assume that we don't know, right? The customer's response will tell us a lot more than what we came across in our own head. I think that kind of level of modesty also help us to create this culture. I always thought like people that find the enjoyment, find the excitement when the product is shipped in customer hand, these people are the best people to build these kind of consumer-facing product. They will find the natural energy of seeing that. They will find that this customer shipping customer hand, it will give them more energy to continue to iterate on it, think about it. And initially, there was a level of doubt in my head that, okay, if we don't come up with something that we can ship quickly to customer, also our founding group might just dissolve, like people will run out of energy, right? There was a real worry in my head because back to where we got started. Okay, so my other 3 co-founders, I don't think they had the startup experience. Our initial agreement is just like let's try this out for a year. Right? It's like I only asked for like a year or 2 of commitment to try this out, like give it a real try. But whether you are going to be really enjoying this founder journey or not, like anyone will be lying to before they try to say they know exactly, right? So
sure.
Like our alignment just say let's give it a real try. So, but I also know that people will run out of energy if your product doesn't really have any users, right? But I found that okay, the best way to kind of create a good virtuous loop, virtuous cycle is really to get product into customers' hand. And that's what we always tend to do. And that these customers, I don't think we've carefully designed it, right? When you presented it that way, it sounds like we know exactly what to do there. But in fact, it's more of like just some disciplines or the way of doing things is what we align on as a founding group, and that kind of a self-selecting actions to take, process to set up, to always keep us along that line of how we do things, and also selected for future employees. So that has its own like very large fan-out benefit that I can talk all day about.
Yeah, right. I think this is a good point to kind of focus on, for HeyMax, like as you build it out, like there's multiple beneficiaries, right? Like there's, partners, merchants, there's buyers, customers. Yep. How, I guess very briefly, like how does the magic all work from a commercial standpoint? Like what are the benefits for each one of those parties?
Yeah, it's all incentive alignment. Going back to Facebook, actually, one of the things that I think we did relatively well is that we always intrinsically understand advertising platform, the power of advertising and the sophistication of advertising systems that potentially can be built and the value it can deliver for the brands, right? Because we work at Facebook for a long time. But one thing that, especially across my tenure at Facebook, from the darling of the industry of the world to all the way to like the thing that everyone can point to and say, like, I don't trust this brand, although most people use some of the Facebook's products.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's really coming down to the inherent defect in the incentive alignment within the product, where if the first product I work on Facebook is just measuring time spent. It's like I own the whole stack on iOS system to figure out for every single page views, how many seconds people are spent on what pages and how does it lead to the next pages, because the entire company's metrics is just set up like on number of users and how many seconds they spend on your product. They spend on more on your product. Awesome. That's all. That's all it was in my first few years at Facebook. It's only when societal impact, mental impact, like how does that really, and it all comes in a bit later, right? And there's more pressure on the company to think harder about what's good, what's bad, right? But it always has this very hard balance between like we want people to spend more time on it, but is it really good? Is the outcome really good for customer, or the outcome is good for the company because advertiser pays more, right? That inherently has its own.
There's a conflict, right?
It's a huge conflict. Same with Google. I'm naturally conflict avoiding as a person, so that reflects in the product where we try to figure out a way to align all the incentive by being very upfront and very clearly laid out why the incentive alignment is there. For example, I think for advertisers, our product, they only pay for the number of transactions that's actually delivered through our platform to them. We don't ask our advertiser to pay for eyeballs, right? It's completely opposite of what Facebook or Google is doing, right? We don't want you to pay for clicks. We only want advertisers to pay for actual revenue increment to their success metric, whatever success metric they want to set out. The deeper in the funnel, the better. So they pay for the success on our platform to be able to attract new customers, finding the right people. And for us to align with consumers is that my earlier metaphor is that we're Duolingo for your personal finance. And it's clearly measured by the number of max miles or free vacations that you get from it. So we are only successful as a company if we deliver all these values in the form of rewards to you in an aggregated format that you can use in the best way possible. Our reward program, Max Miles, is best in class, 26 airlines and hotels that you can transfer to, mostly one-to-one, I think except for 125, I have one-to-one transfer ratio, no fees, no expiry. It's all built so that customers will actually long-term trust for the brand. So I always think that there will be always a group of people who care solely about privacy. I don't recommend these people to use products that give them rewards, because rewards is all about some trade-off. But what people don't do it well enough, and we try to do it more, is to be more explicit and upfront of like what your data used for, and do we have measurable results to help our customers understand that what you're getting from it, so that they can make the best decision for themselves, whether you should trust this platform company or not, right? Rather than being hidden in the terms and conditions, we try to make it very explicit and very measurable in terms of our outcome. So I think the advertising platform and consumer rewards platform that we've built out is pretty well aligned in terms of incentive between us as a platform, consumer getting the rewards, meaning that they are transacting with the brands. The brands only pay for customers who are transacting. They don't pay for any eyeballs that don't transact or they don't deliver the value at all. And we're only successful when we deliver the rewards, move from companies' advertising loyalty dollars into consumers in consumers' hand, right? In a word that we're undercutting Facebook and Google type of advertising by translating most of the advertising values into actual rewards given to consumer.
I want to gear shift here because I could talk about HeyMax all day, but I want to talk about your presence in the wider ecosystem. And I mean, over the course of the time I've known you, your, I would say, LinkedIn prominence has been growing. And I feel, I'm not sure if you feel this, and I don't want to put this weight on your shoulders, obviously, but how do you feel around potentially, being at the helm of one of the up and coming fintechs within the region, and how do you kind of think about that, like from an external projection, but also kind of internally, with your own workforce at HeyMax?
One thing that was very lucky after working at Facebook for so long is that it's actually a required job as a leader at Facebook to post things regularly. There was an internal version of Facebook. So you're trained to post about it. You're supposed to communicate, and you're not supposed to communicate, in downwards kind of email blast. In most of the more traditional company in Facebook, it's like you had to earn engagement of some sort, right? your titles or your leadership position only give you so much, but you actually had to write really good content, write engaging, good reflection, good leadership kind of materials, and had to cut the bulls because you have so much bulls and people also like easily see it. So that was very natural. It's just like I changed the platform from the internal Facebook workplace to LinkedIn, and assume you have to earn an audience. So the best way possible, that I think that's what I trained at Facebook a long time, is just be authentic. If you don't stop being authentic, people don't care about you as much, you will lose trust. So it was very much geared towards authenticity and some level of like transparency that we want to give out. I think that's why I also wanted to publicly talk about failures and talk about things that we don't do that well often and detailed, so that other people, one is our founding journey is always filled with failures. So we want people to see a lot of facets of us so that they can grow more confident that we don't hide things. And then also help other people know that like it's not all glory. It's mostly tough stuff to do.
We like to ask this question of each founder that comes on, and we've been fortunate to sort of speak with folks that are still in a sort of earlier part of their arc or trajectory, through to folks that are at a very mature state. And the question is like, what keeps you up at night? What's the thing that right now we know, and I think the broader ecosystem has a lot of success that's kind of coming HeyMax's way, but what's the thing that Joe worries about?
I worry about too many things every day. I worry a lot about customers, whether customers are actually getting the value that we want to give them, right? That sense of urgency always keep me at night. Ideally, we want customer to be able to spend, we don't want customer to spend more time dealing with our app, right? We want them to be able to sign up for a service, get the best out of it, and then enjoy their life, right? We want to give people both the time and the funding for their vacation so that they can actually enjoy it, right? So that sense of urgency, that are we really doing it? Why are we still, having all these operational issues here and there? We, as a partner, not necessarily moving quick enough, helping us towards that vision, that keeps me at night right now.
As we start to wrap up a bit here, there's one piece that I think early stage founders get a lot of value out of. And we actually asked this question to JJ Chai from Rainforest, who angel invests, and I obviously noticed that you do the same as well. Two components to this question. One, what do you look for in these angel investments? What do you look for as the key traits in founders? And then the second piece, more from the HeyMax perspective, is how do you choose the right investor?
I don't think I'm super active, like trying to source deals to invest. I obviously spend 100% on my time on my day job now as HeyMax founder. For example, Acme started by JX Lai because he didn't invest in my company. So I want to invest in his company. No, seriously, like this is such an interesting reflection. Is I want to build, like he's extremely helpful for us, but he's just disciplined with what he's doing in a certain period of time. He's really helping like Singapore startup ecosystem. I think people are very helpful. JJ Chai, JX Lai, these are very good examples of people who've been helping us a lot. Interestingly, also just human nature. When you need a bond, right, beyond just like occasional LinkedIn, WhatsApp pings to feel that. So you gotta put the bond in somewhat, right? I think some of our most helpful advisors, while they invest in our company and provide so much value, these are great bond. But if that is not necessarily the most available option, then sometimes like I was just like, that was just like one random thought. I was asking him, we're taking angel checks, would be interested. He was very disciplined, very polite, saying no, helping us a lot. Actually, he helped us find a lot of angel investor in our round. I was like thinking like, can I do the other way around? Like, I really want to pay back. I really want to build a bond some way around. Then he obviously got a great list of investors that I think I'm lucky to be able to do that, but I wasn't sourcing a deal per se.
Right.
Cashwise, I think what they're working on, the idea, I care about it a lot. So I think their learnings could be very synergetic to us. What they're doing on the business to B2B end, helping people to automate moving money around to earn the max interest, to make most out of their spare cash. I think I obviously care about for personal front. So I think that, but the most important thing is that their founders just, every event I went to, I can see their founder. They're just in every single event trying to do their best to put their name out there and make it well known. Their resilience, their amount of dedication is just like blow me away. So I think as founders, we have a unique angle looking into finding the deals and finding the way that these founders approach the problems that may be more unique to my own angle. So I thought that if I had a chance, I would just try to support these founders, mostly because the people, secondarily, is whether I have something to add to their product or not.
If you had any final words of advice or learnings for founders listening, what would they be?
Tied back to your earlier question I didn't answer is, I think I was lucky to come across with January Capital. And then it was also a good time that I already kind of learned it the hard way of I probably shouldn't spend as much time talking to people, especially investors that will never really commit to it. They don't understand what we are doing, especially early stage. I know that I have a tendency wanting to be liked, right? Most people do, but most people depends on how honest you are with yourself and how much you're able to be conscious of where your mental state is at. But you always wanted to, especially I think in the beginning, I have friends who are investors, like VCs, right? I'm like, I really want them to validate, right? You want to see that validations, but ended up spending time. And then now I realize, especially in what we do, if the first 5 minutes they don't get it, they will never get it.
Yeah.
I can spend hours, days trying to talk them into it, but always much easier to find ways to diss the idea and say it won't work in other ways, right? It's the conviction that's really hard to find. I think when Ben and I first talked, I already kind of got that learning. So that conversation with Ben and team and you, Alex, I think it was the easiest investor conversation I had. And so now I give a lot of people advice is that one, you got to spread the net pretty wide, right? Make yourself well known so that you can have the top of funnel. You can be pretty quick on filtering out the people that will never really invest. Just because they're a good investor doesn't mean they're a good investor for me. That's my biggest learning. So finding the most synergetic investor who understand it will make our life much easier. Otherwise, it's just so much harder. The other learning about investment, I do want to mention to other founders is that also the difference, the pace that you're moving at. So it's not the one-time shot that you're meeting with one investors and that's all they're gonna remember, or that's all they're gonna evaluating. I realize, especially angel investment, early stage, people also look at what you can do in the delta of 1 month, 3 months time.
For sure. Yeah.
It's good to go out early, talk about what you're gonna do, but actually do it, and then come up with more learning. So that's how we land. The JJ Chai actually, I think, got excited about us. It's not because our initial idea was so good. He actually had a lot of doubt. He told me in the beginning or the first meeting, but the second meeting that the fact that what I said in the first meeting is all executed and validated, and there's tons of more coming up.
Yeah.
Then that give them so much confidence that what you said will be at least executed.
It's funny that you say that because JJ Chai explicitly said that was the thing that he looks for in founders, is that speed of execution and being able to deliver.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Joe, thanks for joining us on the first podcast. It was awesome.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.